You know, Pokemon is one of my favourite franchises. It has been ingrained into my DNA since I was a child, but after Generation 4, I felt like the franchise was starting to stagnate, but I continued to buy the games anyway because I still wanted to see what these games had to offer. Legends Arceus was the game that I thought would push the franchise into a new direction. It was something unique, never done before by Game Freak. I've always wanted a game where I could actively catch Pokemon, and I was hoping that Gen 9 would follow in the same footsteps as Legends Arceus while being in a modern day setting, but part of me already knew that Legends Arceus was a test to see how the fanbase would react to a wildly different Pokemon experience. And then we got the announcement for Scarlet and Violet a month later. I knew from that trailer that it wasn't going to be the action RPG that I wanted, so I was already against this game for reverting back to the traditional method, and when it released I convinced myself that I wasn't going to buy it. All the reviews were coming out and they were mixed but shared a similar common sentiment. The core game was great, probably one of the best in the series and fun to play, but it had a lot of technical issues, and this is where FOMO hit me hard. So I bottled it in the end and bought Violet after spending a month ranting about it to multiple friends. My first impressions of the game were mixed. It was definitely better than Sword and Shield at least, but once I finished the game I didn't continue playing it as I didn't think there was much for me to do. I'm not really interested in raid battles, and after completing the decks in Sword and Legends Arceus, I didn't really feel like I was in a position to attempt that in Violet either. Also, 2023 has been stacked for video games, and even though it's been dubbed as one of the best years in gaming, it's actually been quite shit for me. My most anticipated game was a space exploration game which was boring and lacked any sort of exploration, and I played a superhero game that constantly tried to take the superhero out the game because, you know, anyone can be a hero. Tears of the Kingdom was my saviour. After recovering from the boredom that Starfield caused me, I wanted to play something safe and familiar, and there was no better time to jump back into Pokemon Violet, especially with the new DLC launching. And it's just over a year old, so the game's got to be in a better state, right? So I started a brand new playthrough, and part of the way through I decided to approach the game differently. I've realised that in later generations I subjectively think that most Pokemon after Gen 4 are inferior, so I tend to use Pokemon that I'm already familiar with. So in this playthrough I used Pokemon in the later generations to learn about some of the newer Pokemon and avoid using my go-tos like Gardevoir and Garchomp. Using newer gen Pokemon did make the game more difficult for me. Even though this is my second playthrough, I had to learn and guess some of the newer Pokemon's typings because I have a memory of a Magikarp, and when you get the typing wrong, you open yourself up to a lot more danger. I genuinely have a memory issue when it comes to Pokemon types, weaknesses and strengths because there are so many now. I have to keep telling myself, you can fight the darkness but you can't fight a psychic, but the psychic doesn't like darkness, bugs or ghost. This is how I remember the complicated typing of Ghost Arc and Psychics. I think my favourite Pokemon that I've used in this playthrough so far is Mudsdale. It's slow, but it's a defensive beast. It's able to tank a lot of physical attack, and when that is coupled with its ability Stamina, it gets a defense boost every time it takes damage. Definitely helped me through the later stages of the game because my team feels unbalanced. To be honest, I'm not a great team builder. I've primarily played Pokemon games for the exploration, catching Pokemon and beating the Pokemon champion. I never really delved into the hardcore side of it with the IVs and EVs to build a competitive team. Maybe that'll be something to try in the future. My playthrough started with much more of a challenge due to the route I took. At the start of the game, you get an option to start in the east or the west, and the ideal route is to start west at Cortando Gym and then go to the east to battle the Stony Cliff Titan. But as you can see in this image, the ideal route takes you back and forth across the map. Nobody would ever go through the game in this way shown without searching online for a guide, so I reckon most players must have encountered a difficulty spike at some point. If you have a look at the route I took, I went west and continued west, which was alright, until for whatever goddamn reason, Nurse Joy kept suggesting that I battled the Quaking Earth Titan after my 4th badge, which as you can see I was severely underleveled. I should be taking on the Dark Crew around level 21, but I am being told to battle the Earth Titan which is level 44. And to make matters worse, you can't see the Titan's level, so I didn't know where I was going wrong. I went to Nurse Joy multiple times in different areas and she kept suggesting the Earth Titan. and so I attempted it 3 times and lost each time. In the end, I decided to go east, and then I was severely overleveled. I started coasting, and there's nothing more boring than the lack of challenge in a Pokemon game. I was overleveled for around 3 or 4 of the badges. Because of this, I'm not too fond of the layout of the gyms, Titans and Team Star bases. I kind of miss the more linear structure of the older games. However, exploring different areas and coming across new Pokemon will remain a strength for this game. I plan to get the DLC packs, try to complete the Pokédex and do some shiny hunting. So if you want to see me continue my journey, please like and subscribe. Currently, I am at the last Team Star base, which is the Fight Crew, so I'm close to the end now. I still think Scarlet and Violet has one of the best stories to date in a Pokemon game. It tries to change what we know and come to expect from a Pokemon game in unique ways. A good example for this is Team Star. Immediately, you would think, oh, this is this generation's Team Rocket. Let's hope they are not as boring as Team Skull or Team Yell, who didn't really have any real motivations. But instead, what we got was a compelling reason to empathise with the leaders of Team Star. As it turns out, they were simply trying to stand up for themselves. Each character was unique with their own personalities and reasons for joining the team. I still think they could have done a little bit more for the gameplay aspect for Team Star stories, as I wasn't really fond of the Let's Go mechanic. I just think it was a little bit boring sending out 3 Pokemon to take out 30 Pokemon. Didn't really take any brain power, but I really enjoyed Team Star's story. And then we have Arven's story in the Path of Legends and Area Zero, which again subverts player expectation by changing the professor and what you come to expect from them. Simply put, the professor is an arsehole who drove his family away in the pursuit of science. When you first meet Arven, he seems like an arsehole too. But once you spend more time with him, you understand his reasoning for his behaviour, and you can see that he is caring and compassionate. His journey to save his sick Pokemon leads to great character development, and he's one of my favourite characters in recent Pokemon stories. The Victory Road storyline is alright. It's your journey to become champion, but it doesn't really add anything to the overarching plot. The gym challenges do leave a lot to be desired though. In terms of the game's performance, it has definitely improved, but it still needs work. Occasionally I'd have a few frame rate issues, but it was nowhere near as bad as it was at launch. It only really happened when there's a lot of people or Pokemon on screen, or when you're moving quickly through the world. I didn't suffer any crashes or wild glitches. In my first playthrough, I experienced several crashes, and I even fell through the floor. I also had Miraidon turn invisible, which was actually quite hilarious. You still have the occasional clipping through walls and floors, and the bug where you throw a Pokeball to catch a Pokemon and the Pokeball remains in the air, but this isn't a deal breaker for me. I do find it annoying though that the game can't keep up while riding through the world. So Pokemon pop up and appear out of nowhere, which you bump into them and are forced to battle. This happens all the time, and the draw distance is quite close for a modern game. You can see textures loading and popping in. It can be quite immersion breaking as you have this annoying thing that's taking your attention away from the game. The game still looks ugly in areas, there's no change in that. The Pokemon models still look great though. You'll see fur-like textures on a Pokemon like Sprigatito, or a shiny coating-like texture on a Pokemon like Magnemite on its body, frame, whatever you want to call it. When I say the game looks ugly, I'm talking about the landscape textures like the trees, the grass, the texture-tiled landscape cliffsides that you'll see. Even still, I have a newfound appreciation for this game, and it's because Game Freak at least understand the core of the game and what the fan base enjoys. Whether you like to catch Pokemon and complete the Pokédex, competitive battling, shiny hunting, there is improvements in all of these areas. For the next game, they need to improve on the performance, immersive and presentation areas of the game, as well as adding a shiny sound cue in the game like PLA. It's difficult to tell if a Pokemon is a shiny or not when you have a whole new generation of Pokemon. I was in the middle of a battle, right, and I could see this Oinkologne, I think that's how you pronounce it, and I couldn't remember what colour it was, and part of me knew it must have been a shiny. So once I finished my battle, I tried to find it and it disappeared. And later on throughout my playthrough, I found a shiny Voltorb, and this is when I realised there isn't a shiny cue to let us know. How do you expect us to memorise over 1000 Pokemon's shiny variation? Game Freak, add a shiny sound cue again please. Is Pokemon Scarlet and Violet Violet a Pokemon game worth recommending in its current version? Well, compared to other Pokemon Switch titles, I think it stands out as one of the best. It's still flawed, but incredibly fun to play, and I think that's what matters the most. I hope that Game Freak learned from the mistakes made with Gen 9 and PLA so we can get a stable and a game that looks great at launch. What do you think of Scarlet and Violet? Did you enjoy it? What do you think Game Freak could do to improve for the next gen? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you for watching. My name is Gemma and I'll catch you again in the next one.